have access to a spirit, a strength that enlarges and empowers you. Even better, you don't need to wait for the next big movement. You can heal the world. It's time for governance by grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka.
Brought to you by the Zero Aggression Project, Zap the State, and have a nice day. And by the way, try to do both of those, okay? We really appreciate it when you when you figure out how to have a nice day and when you figure out how to zap the state. Okay, so immigration has been in the news, and we want to do a podcast this morning that is not about immigration. Just before we went on air, Jim made that exact comment. This is not about immigration. So what is it about, Jim?
It's about empathy with the future.
Empathy with the future.
Yeah, so there has been this division. We're going to get into it very specifically about whether you're pro-American, anti-American, whether you're pro-Trump, anti-Trump, whether you're pro-immigrant or you're pro-ICE, whether you are supportive of MS-13. I mean, it's just like there's been this division that's been created here. It happens again and again, and precedents are being set.
Yes.
So I want to talk about pendulums and precedents here today. I want to show what I believe is happening. Now, the case before us is Kilmar Garcia, a Maryland man who was deported to a country that he specifically was not supposed to be deported to. Like, it was in his documents that it would be dangerous to deport this man back to his country, ergo, don't do it. And then it was done anyway. And it was done, and I'm sorry. Like, I hate when I'm repeating something that is all over the media. I don't want to be the guy that says the thing. We do a show where we are constantly trying to say the thing that nobody else is saying, but this is being said, and it isn't being said enough or well enough, in my opinion. I feel like I need to add my voice to it. This is about due process. And what I have found, because I've been in some personal discussions, I've been in some online discussions, I've been in private chats, I have found that no one knows how to argue. And I don't like using absolutes either. I don't like suggesting that no one knows how to argue, but everyone that has disagreed with me so far has felt the need to cloud the situation, to muddy the waters, to throw in a whole bunch of chum so that we can't focus on the thing that's going on.
Right. I heard that on the Gary Nolan show that you were on. And you just went right to the exact thing that is the issue. All the other stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, and I want to clarify what those issues are. And in a moment, I'm going to do precisely that. I'm going to lay out. There's 4 of them, and I'm going to lay them out. But what I notice about how people are processing information, and I've been discussing this with other friends here today, is that people are responding to how the news makes them feel. I'm going to show you an example of that in just a moment. So instead of actually focusing on facts, instead of actually being about principles, people are about the moment and they're about their subjective feelings. This makes me feel this, ergo. And so I get asked questions like, why are you defending this guy, Kilmar Garcia? Why are you defending? I mean, he's MS-13, for God's sake. Why are you defending him? Well, first, it's an accusation. You don't have actual evidence. Nobody that I've spoken to has evidence in their hands. I can't even tell. I've got to be honest with you. It seems to me when I'm talking to them, they've read no elements of the Supreme Court decision.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so what they're expressing then, what they tend to do next is express platitudes. Like, this cannot happen. We've got to stop this, whatever. MS-13 has been in the country for a very long time. They've been in the country since the 1980s. Now, all of a sudden, we have to throw out our constitutional system to deal with that problem. And I find that no one can actually focus on the 4 issues, which I'm going to lay out in a moment. This is important. What I'm about to say here now is important. It is a debate tactic to muddy the waters. It's a debate scheme would be a better way. It's being clever. And people who have done debate in a competition level or professionally know that there are tricks and tactics you can do where you can make this about the other party. You can make this about the other, about who said what, when. You can make this about their motivations for saying the things. You can do everything you could possibly do to ignore the actual arguments. And if you can successfully ignore the arguments, you can win the hearts and minds of the observers, or, and this is the real thing that bothers me, you can muddy the waters so much that no one feels they're capable of arguing. So I do not want to enter discussions. I have a habit of not wanting to enter debates where I don't know what I'm talking about. And I do have this for somewhat professional reasons. I also have this for personal relational reasons, given what I do for a living. I meet people. I make a judgment even at the beginning of a discussion whether it's going to be worth my time. Like, I don't want to anger people. I don't want to hurt their feelings. I don't want to win an argument at their expense in front of their friends. I think through all of these things. But what I really don't want to do is come across as ignorant. And ignorance, this is, oh man, everybody, the population has become incredibly stupid. I'm sorry. Ignorance does not mean stupid. It means you don't yet know. Now, if you hold on to something after you've been shown it, if your ignorance is corrected and you proceed forward, you are first a fool, and eventually we can declare you potentially stupid. Okay? We can go ahead and do that because you've now been told the truth and you have refused to acknowledge that truth and you dug your heels in. So we can go further and say the more pejorative things. But we all start off, we're born ignorant. That's our natural state. And we are ignorant about more things. I, Jim Babka, am ignorant about more things than I am right about because everything has a tremendous amount of depth and breadth, and you just can't know everything. So what happens is that when a guy gets up like Stephen Miller, who we'll address in this episode, gets up and propagandizes on behalf of the president of the United States, and he lies not once but repeatedly in the process. And he puts out things. And Carolyn Levitt, who goes and speaks at the White House press room, goes out and puts out various content. And she muddies the water. What they do is they make it impossible for people to come together and have a real discussion about what actually happened because no one knows. And then here's the next step. And this is the fatal one. Well, it's not really possible for me to know, so I'm just going to switch the channel and go do something else. Or it's not really possible for me to know, so I'm just going to trust my team and do something else. And nobody goes further into the discussion. And if there's anything I want to do today, it's address that problem. And I don't honestly expect to change anybody's mind. Let me tell you how I feel about this, how strongly I feel about this. We're not making this about immigration for the following reasons. I'm not going to appeal to anybody's humanitarianism because the people that are on the other side on this issue that think that Kilmar Garcia doesn't deserve due process and needs to stay where he's at, they don't have concern for an individual. They have no understanding of what an individual is. So I'm not going to make an appeal to their humanitarianism. I'm not going to make an appeal to their Christianity. They've ignored the Old Testament guidance on aliens and sojourners and the New Testament directives regarding one's neighbor, especially that pesky Samaritan one. I'm not going to appeal to American pride. I actually believe this country is a great place, and I understand why people want to come here. But, when people come back with an argument, try these immigration rules in a foreign country and see how far you get. Okay, so we've lowered our standards there. I've got it. I'm clear. I'm not going to make an argument to your party and appeal to your better angels in your party because right now, everybody's argument is, well, they did it first. Well, they did this. And so we're excused in all of our warlike behavior now. We can do anything we want because the other side cheated. The other side did wrong. The other side behaved immorally. So now we can be immoral too. It's all fair in love and war, right? I'm not going to appeal to anything called limited government conservatism. First of all, I'm long on record as saying there is no such thing as conservatism. Conservatism exists expressly for the purpose of backstopping whatever progressive move was done in the previous generation. I learned this from Bob Dole, who was elected to Congress opposing Medicare and Medicaid and leaves the U.S. Senate saying his greatest accomplishment was saving Social Security. That took less than 30 years for that transition to happen. That's about the amount of time that conservatives come along and say, well, that progressive innovation to stay, but no more new ones. But the real issue in this particular case is you folks believe that the government's serving your ends. So all the small government stuff goes right out the window. You want all this stuff now. And we're going to talk about what that's going to mean to you in the future. I'm not going to appeal to constitutionalism. I'm not going to do that because you keep trying to turn that document into a state of privileges. You don't want it to be about rights. You want it to be about privileges. Certain people have privileges. Other people don't. Today, it's citizens and non-citizens. But tomorrow, it's going to be my party and not your party. Or it's going to be you people who believe this or don't believe that. We can run them all off. You think I'm exaggerating? I'm going to show you how fast, in just 1 week, the slope slipped. You're going to show you. And speaking of rights, I'm not going to appeal to the Declaration of Independence either, wherein it said rights didn't come from governments. We've got this ridiculous debate, which I do want to go into at some point in the future, not today, about whether the Constitution applies to persons or governments. But I'm not going to go there either today. I'm not going to make that argument to you. The document expressly said your rights came from the Creator. I am so damn tired of believers, Christians, walking around saying we need more God in culture. Well, here it is, right in the Declaration of Independence, endowed with certain inalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That is the origin document. That is the document that explains where they come from. Your rights don't come from government. They are pre-constitutional in nature. But I'm not going to make that argument with you today, because none of these arguments are you going to listen to, even though you claimed at some point in the very recent past, maybe even just weeks ago, that these were your values. I'm not going to appeal to it. I'm simply not going to do it. I recognize that everybody wants to spend their time in emotion land. This is how it makes me feel. So, Bill, here's the argument I want to make today. This is the argument I want to make today. History has a pendulum attached to it. It swings back and forth. And just a few months ago, we were so young back then, we were concerned about cancel culture. People who are today willing to lock someone up without due process were like, can you believe they're censoring us on Facebook? And I was mad. And I spoke up about that repeatedly on your behalf, on my behalf, because I knew that that was wrong, because I had a principle. I believed a lot of the things I just told you. And I said this was wrong. And so did you. And then the second you've got this power, I mean, we're not 100 days into this term, and you're already like, nope, let's lock them all up. We're headed to a point where it's going to be lock up the libs. I promise you, this is where it's going. And here's the thing. Pendulum swing. So the power that you give today to a politician you like to do something you love is a power that will be used tomorrow to do by a politician you loathe to do something you hate. You are creating the precedents for tomorrow. This system might not come for you expressly. It could, but it will come. It will come for someone you care about. And you will be the one who pulled down the barriers. You will be the one that eroded the wall of the Constitution that was designed to hem in and restrict the power of the government, of Donald Trump, of Stephen Miller, of Douglas Holman, of Pam Bondi, of Marco Rubio. And before we're done, I'm going to show you that you are getting ready to throw me in the waters for even having the temerity to say this to you.
So if it's not about all of that, what's the best argument?
I need you to, it's the pendulum and argument. I need you to understand this is coming for you. You should at least have some empathy for your future self, just a little bit. Empathy for your future family and friends, just a little bit, because it's coming for you. You have to know that Donald Trump's probably not getting a third term, but it doesn't matter. Somebody else is coming. He will die eventually. Someone else is coming. And they're not going to look and sound and be like you, and they're going to be mad as hell, just like you are now. So
do we have a shot at this pendulum thing?
I am trying to be a prophetic voice. I am Cassandra right now, because maybe no one wants to listen, but when it comes down, my final resort is when this all comes down and it goes the exact opposite way that a lot of these people anticipate, that they will hear my voice and they'll realize, oh my God, he was right. I hope it never comes to that. And that's why I'm speaking up today. If you look through the history of the Third Reich, there's a book I read, and I cannot remember what the book was. I only read a segment of it, probably about 15, 20 years ago. And in that book, someone was describing the process of how it declines. Everybody's heard that palm first they came, but here's actually the detail of that. There are times when it is easier to speak, and there are times later when it is harder to speak, and there are times that come where speaking is literally existential, life and death. And so the right time to speak is when it's easiest. And a lot of people won't do it because they're like, right now it's going to raise a ruckus, going to feel weird. People aren't going to like me. It might cause a little division. People are, and they avoid speaking, or they avoid speaking for the reason we've already cited, because they believe the waters have been muddied and they don't know what the truth is and they don't know how to speak. And so they stay silent. And you just can't have that in a democracy. You have to speak up. This isn't the system of government I wanted. I didn't write it. I didn't sign the contract. It's not my social contract, but it is where I live. And so what little bit or shreds of liberty we have, I don't want to see lost. So I'm going to speak up for it in a prophetic way. Bill, let me outline here right now what I think the 4 issues are. The 4 issues. None of them are immigration. Let me repeat this. None of them are deportation. Not immigration, not deportation. They are, number 1, due process. Due process is an empathetic process. We learn the truth of a matter by following a certain set of rules. Those rules include the presumption of innocence, guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, trial by a jury, habeas corpus, which is the ability to actually get the hearing in the first place. That's how we do things. That's American. That's constitutional. But again, it's hard for people to absorb these constitutional norms. Everybody's pretending like these are novel, new ideas. They're not novel. They're not new. They existed right from the beginning of the Republic. And if you I had the opportunity this year to go through voir dire on a jury trial that involved murder. I didn't get picked to be in the jury, but they made very, 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 very clear to the people that were participating so that they couldn't miss the point. They gilded the lily about the role that the state had, the burden that they had in obtaining a conviction. That's due process. Number 2, an order was specifically violated as to where Mr. Abrego could go by a court that had already examined the matter. And when he got deported, this is where the error occurs. There was no attempt to match up to that order and figure out what was going on. They discovered it after he was already deported.
Right. Oops, mistake.
So they violated an order. There's the Stephen Miller is pretending in his pack of lies, his just large, I don't know how he carries them all around. He's got so many going on. His haughty pack of lies. He is pretending as if the order was just a immigration court order, and it was overruled by another action. That never happened. No legal procedure was done to address what a court had already examined. I don't care whether it was an Article 2 or 3 court. We shouldn't have Article 2 courts. That's one of the problems on the table here. But the issue that matters is that somebody who had examined this had a standing order that said, don't do X. Like, there's a lot of countries in the world. I don't know how many, 195? I don't know what the exact number is. There's one country you can't send them to. And where do they send them?
Yep.
Okay.
You had one job.
Then they refused to abide by a 9-0 Supreme Court order.
Not only did they refuse it, they portrayed it in the opposite way.
I'm going to get to that because that's number 4. Number 4 is that Stephen Miller has publicly gaslighted everyone on this issue. He has gone before the media in press conference, and he also did it from the Oval Office at the president's behest. And if he managed to say the truth in anything that he said, it was an accident. It was a calculated decision designed to lie. The biggest lie being that they won 9-0 when the exact opposite was true. Okay. Now I want to back up on this 9-0 Supreme Court order, though. There's debate. And one of the ways that they've, thrown chum in the water is said, well, the Supreme Court only ordered them to facilitate. That is not true. They were asked to by the district court originally to facilitate and effectuate. Effectuate's a much stronger word. Facilitate means you're going to make the means possible to make this happen. You're going to grease the skids. I got it. But effectuate means you're going to cause to happen.
Yep.
And the court has advised them to, quote, take all available steps. Now, I made a comparison. You brought up the Gary Nolan show. I was on the Gary Nolan show last week, and when I did that show, I made a comparison. I made a leap. My son happened to be listening. He said, I made the leap too fast. Nobody knew where I was going. The President of the United States wrote a book. It's called The Art of the Deal. He has portrayed himself as part of his public persona as the master negotiator. He knows how to get a negotiation to happen. He knows how to get things done. In the case of China, he's having a fight right now over a variety of issues in the trade realm. And when China said, we're not going to cooperate, we're not going to go along with your scheme, did he go, oh, okay, well, I politely asked, and that's enough? The answer is no, he did not. And the comparison here is that it's not enough to turn to Mr. Bukele and say, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. I mean, we all know what we're doing here. And say, you want to let him go? And then he says, no, of course I don't want to let him go because he's a terrorist. And why would I release a terrorist? And I would have to kidnap him to do it, which, by the way, I don't even understand, or smuggle him. I think smuggle was the word used. I don't even know how that begins to compute. I mean, that's a complete moronic addition to the entire discussion. Ha, 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 ha. See, we can't even do it. I asked him. The President of the United States, this master negotiator, cannot effectuate his return home. Now, we have learned since that thing happened in the Oval Office at the beginning of the week that by the end of the week, we knew that we're paying for those prisoners to be there, which puts paid to all the lies that Stephen Miller told. We are paying for those prisoners. Your tax dollars are paying for them to be housed there. It's a deal that we made. Every time you hear the word government, folks, in association with the U.S. government or your state government, or maybe even your local government, just think grift. Just immediately leap to that thing. What is the grift? Follow the money, cui bono. Who's benefiting? It turns out we're paying. The U.S. taxpayer is paying to keep this person there. And they want to build more prisons and they want to take more of our people. There's no way that the president doesn't have leverage in this situation. There's no way he can't say, bring that one guy back. In fact, what's most interesting about this particular case is how hard they've dug their heels in on one man. See, I got asked when I was on Gary's show, you're going to go to bat about this? This is the place where you're going to make your stand? One guy? Well, that is exactly the point. Why is the President of the United States choosing this hill on which to die, so to speak, to make his case? Why don't they just bring him back? Why don't they just say, oops, sorry, made a mistake, bring him back? I mean, he was able to do that when it came to tariffs. Oops, sorry, we jumped too soon. So those are the four issues. Let me review them again. Due process. Violating an order where Mr. Garcia could not be sent to El Salvador. Refusing to abide by the Supreme Court's 9-0 order. And Stephen Miller publicly gaslighting. Let's be honest. Lying. Literally telling the opposite of the truth and making up new facts.
Yeah.
Right in the president's presence, right to the national media, even as the president sat around insulting the media for having the temerity to ask questions. Those are the four issues. Did you notice what I didn't say there? I didn't say deportation. I didn't say immigration.
Nothing.
I didn't say illegal aliens.
Yep.
I didn't say ICE. I didn't say any of those things. And everybody wants, and I also didn't say domestic abuse, which has been brought up about Mr. Abrego. Okay. And here's something else that proves that people can't argue. So Carolyn Leavitt comes and she speaks to the American people from the White House on Wednesday, I believe it was. And she brings a mother along whose daughter was murdered by an undocumented alien. And this is a horrific story. It includes a 125-foot blood streak in it. It's terrible. This is a horrendous, awful tragedy. It's terrible. What does that have to do with Mr. Garcia? What connection does that have with him?
Exactly.
This is two things. rhetorically, this is a non sequitur. It's a one thing not connected to another. And as a rhetorical device, it works in the following way. And again, I'm going to speak to conservatives, so-called conservatives, in a way that they can understand. There are still Sandy Hook parents who want to eliminate the Second Amendment. They'd like to amend the Constitution. They would like to take away private gun ownership because their children were killed. And they use those deaths and they say, oh, well, you just want children to die. Every time a mass shooting comes up, the people who want to defend the Second Amendment just want children to die. Or maybe, because I know this was a long time ago, I'm really going to be challenging people's historical memory right now. Maybe when you didn't think that a mask was warranted, or maybe when you didn't want to get the shot, you just wanted people to die. You're the bad guy. You just want people to die. We should be able to use the force of law to make you do things. We should be able to arrest you. We should be able to put the shot in you and take your job if you refuse it, because you just want people to die. This is exactly the same rhetorical device. It's no different. Not at all in quality. It's exactly the same. It's taking something that doesn't relate to another thing and and engaging in what is essentially emotional blackmail. But it's also non-germane.
Yeah.
In a court of law, maybe Garcia let's assume that he has a conviction, which he does not, for domestic violence on his record. Let's assume he actually has a conviction. But he's being tried for this alleged trafficking he's engaged with or some other criminal activity that he allegedly did with MS-13. And let's assume for the sake of argument that he's guilty there as well. Okay, he actually did the thing. Do you know what the jury wouldn't get to hear?
Well, they can't combine the cases.
That's exactly right. They would not get to hear about the domestic violence. It would not be allowed to be brought up. It's non-germane because it creates bias.
Yeah.
And that is exactly the intent of this administration, is to create bias against this human being. In all of this, a human being is being lost. Listen, maybe he's a bad guy. I don't know. But that's not where we're allowed to start. It's the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. There I am arguing again. Sorry. It's going to come for you someday. You won't have the ability to prove that you're innocent. Now, there's a bunch. I want to show the slope. First, there are a bunch of cases. There's not just one. There are several cases of the people who were taken on those flights that are questionable as well. There's problems with those cases, and due process appears to have been ignored in those situations too. The reason that we are talking about Mr. Garcia now is because that one is the one where the government has to admit they made a mistake and they sent him to a place they were expressly not permitted to do. Mr. Miller keeps asking, oh, where else were we supposed to send him? He's a citizen of El Salvador. Literally, it's like, I remember like last year, a lot of these people, and the year before that, they were into this film even, I don't remember the name of it, that had to do with human trafficking. And they were like, people that would traffic children are so terrible, blah, blah, blah. So a young man, apparently and allegedly, flees El Salvador to get away from gangs who have tried to impress him, draft him, make him part of one gang or the other. He flees the country and says, I can't go back there because it's dangerous to me because I didn't join those gangs. And they're like, we can't have any sympathy for this dude. He joined a gang. Wait, I thought we had sympathy for children that were trafficked in some way. No, not this one. Not this one. He's from El Salvador. Is that how that all works? So, but we're focused on this case now because it's the one that we can discuss. It's the one that has risen to the top for discussion. But there are several of these stories, and we may at some point get into those too, because the stories. I want to say, I think that the whole warts and all versions of these stories should be told. We shouldn't be trying to hide the truth about what is or isn't true in a given situation, but we should be smart enough. We should be wiser. We should be more humane in recognizing that certain things are not germane to other things. It's just that simple. They're non sequiturs. And we should be able to parse out the truth of a matter. And that's essentially what I'm calling for here today, I guess. But there are other highly questionable cases, Bill. Let's go one step further. So during this last week, we found out in the news that at least 3 people, 2 immigration lawyers and a doctor by the name of Lisa Anderson, a 58-year-old woman born in Pennsylvania, who has no connection. These other two are immigration lawyers. So maybe, they're in an immigration file somewhere, but they were told that their parole had been lifted and they had to deport themselves. To where? These are women born in the United States, U.S. citizens, and they're as white as you and me, Bill. And
what possible offense are they being paroled from?
Well, so I don't know. It's not clear to any of these people, but imagine at first you might look at something like this and go, this has got to be spam, or this is a fish, or this is some other fraud, right?
Right.
Like this can't be real. And if you're thinking that, that's probably a dangerous position to be in. Lisa Anderson is carrying her passport with her everywhere right now to prove her U.S. citizen. She's using it as her U.S. citizenship document. She's carrying papers.
Yeah.
She's so scared, she's carrying papers with her everywhere. But she was told that she needs to leave of her own volition. She was to, quote, self-deport. And you say, oh, well, that was a paperwork error. But can you imagine the horror if this was you? They've also wiped out people who had legally applied for Social Security numbers. They've wiped out many of their accounts, which in this country effectively makes you a non-person. You don't have the mark of the, I'm sorry, I was about to say the mark of the beast. I shouldn't have said that. You don't have a Social Security number. You can't buy or sell in this country. Okay? Let's go further down the trail. Florida said that we're going to show that we're the leaders in this whole immigration thing. We're going to pass a special law and we're going to make a deal with ICE where we start putting illegal immigrants in our own prisons. And so they came after a young man, I believe he's 18. His name's Juan Carlos Lopez Gomez, who was born in Georgia. He is a U.S. citizen. His mother shows up in court because he's being held in a Florida county jail, not a prison, a Florida county jail. And the judge looks at his birth certificate, looks at the watermark and indicia, says the birth certificate's legitimate, looks at the Social Security card, says that document's legitimate. Everything that you have given me should require the case to be kicked to the curb, but this is beyond my jurisdiction due to Florida law.
A federal judge.
No, this is a county judge.
A county judge, okay.
Will not act because the state has told her she's not allowed. And voila, he can be held. Now, thank God, there were a lot of people who got active in Florida and they got him out. And we have video. So here he is hugging his mom. Fortunately, he was able to get out due to political pressure. Could have been disappeared. What if he had been put on that plane and it just suddenly was too late? And this is an American citizen. You say, well, they're not going to come for white people. They're not going to come for American citizens. And we've already got some evidence that that's wrong here, right?
Yep.
Okay, not going to come for white people. Let me go a little further.
Oh, I know. This is crazy.
Canadian actress Jasmine Mooney. She's appeared on stuff you've seen. Mostly commercials. She was arrested in March and held in ICE detention at 2 different facilities where she had no communication from the second one with the outside world. It was an 11-day ordeal. And she was simply trying to enter the U.S. in San Diego under a procedure she'd followed several times before to come in and do some work in California in the film industry, in the advertising industry. She was coming to do acting work and just was simply coming in to renew her visa, her work visa, in exactly the way she had done on several occasions before. And she gets disappeared for 11 days. Now, she had an attorney and friends and was able to make an initial call and get some balls rolling on her behalf. There was a point at which her story is so traumatic. She didn't know whether or not anybody was doing anything for her. She got transferred, wasn't told where she was going to be taken to. Nobody ever knew anything when she was going through the process. And she tells a story of scores of women caught up in the exact same problem with her who didn't have the same clout and ability that she had. And this is just trying to change a work visa. There's a similar story about a German woman who went through this exact same thing. She too got detained by ICE for a period of time, right? So they're sweeping up people They're sweeping up people who are pretty white. Is our position that nobody should visit the United States? There should be no tourists. There should be no guest workers.
Oh, that's already taken care of.
So I'm aware of a story personally where I'm not directly connected, but I'm connected to a family member where there's going to be a wedding in the near future, and it involves an Australian man and an American woman. And his Australian family, because there's a couple stories out of their headlines there, has decided they're not going to come to the United States for the wedding. Okay. So, okay, Jim, some mistakes are going to be made. If you're going to make some omelets, you got to break a few eggs. But see, the problem here is you're pretending they're someone else's eggs, that they're never going to be your eggs, that these aren't setting precedents for what's going to come your direction. Okay. So now let's go up. We're going to ramp it one more. We're going to slide down into hell one step
Slippery
further.
slope once more.
So the president sits in the Oval Office at the beginning of the week with the president of El Salvador, Bukele, and he suggests sending Americans. Oh, just the worst of the worst, he says. We're just going to send the worst of the worst. Sending Americans to camps in other countries, maybe to seize prisons in El Salvador. He even turns to Bukele and says, maybe you should build some more. So it's not just illegal aliens that we're talking about here. It's not just people of a different race than you. It's not just people, it's people that are born here, raised here, that the government says have committed some of the most heinous crimes who could be sent there. But you say to me, well, Jim, I'm not foreign born. I don't have dark skin. I'm not coming from another country. I haven't committed any crime, heinous crimes. This isn't going to affect me. So I want to introduce you to Jim Babka. Because everything that I just did in the first 37 minutes of this show was a crime. In fact, it's been equated to treason, which is the most serious crime in the U.S. federal Constitution. I want to play a clip. This is the deputy assistant to the president and the so-called counterterrorism czar. Czar, an appropriate term for this little dictator in waiting, talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Listen to the claim that he makes.
With this over a year ago when I had my show on Newsmax, Rob, and I realized that the taxonomy of politics in America is dead. It's not left and right. It's not even Republican or Democrat. There's one line that divides us. Do you love America or do you hate America? It's really quite that simple. And we have people who love America, like the president, like his cabinet, like the directors of his agencies, who want to protect Americans. And then there is the other side that is on the side of the cartel members, on the side of the illegal aliens, on the side of the terrorists. And you have to ask yourself, are they technically aiding and abetting them? Because aiding and abetting criminals and terrorists is a crime in federal statute, Rob.
I don't want you to miss the very end of it. It's the ending is the most important part. First, he says aiding and abetting. Right before that, he uses the word technically. So he is speaking with precision. And then he says what the technical nature of aiding and abetting is a crime. So what constitutes aiding and abetting? That's the entire rest of the clip preceding it. It's doing exactly what I just did in front of you right now. Sebastian Gorka, the counterterrorism czar, wants to say, speak up for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, you're committing a crime. We know that you hate America and we need to punish you.
So
and the host of that show, by the way, Bill, responded and said, yeah, it seems like treason.
Yeah.
So anybody who's going to join in this is putting themselves
for due process.
Yes. You're putting yourself on the line. So let me say something that I say from a very spiritual place. They stone prophets, and I believe I'm speaking in a prophetic way today. Prophecy is to tell the truth about a situation, unpopular truth. And so it's not an accident that they stone prophets. And that's where this is kind of headed in a way. They also martyr people who stand up for the marginalized. This is a historic fact. It happens again and again and again and again in history. It's repeated. And the best way to avoid that martyrdom is to speak up early and often, as much as you can, because they can't throw us all in the cage and they can't kill all of us. The more people speak up, the harder it is for them to do it. There's already evidence that the president's polls are declining on almost every issue. Immigration's lagging a bit because it's the newest issue. It's the only one where he's presently above water. In early February, he was up pretty high. So I don't want to overstate the case. Apocalyptic predictions have a poor track record. And we may just survive this like we've survived everything else, and we may move right on. And I hope and pray that's exactly what happens. But everything I've told you is basically the product of the past week. And they mean it. They literally mean it. So Chris Rufo, who is a commentator of some note, has suggested that they are going to borrow from the Cultural Marxist Handbook. They are literally looking to Antonio Gramsci. They've decided they're going to be the new cultural Marxists. You remember when Black Lives Matter were cultural Marxists and how bad that was?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They are now going to do it. And I want to explain what is actually happening with this cultural Marxism. It's simply mimesis. We just did an episode. And because it had more of an Easter theme to it, it didn't get as many views as it should have gotten. And I'm terribly frustrated about this. Because people, once you have this tool and you're able to see it, what happens in the feud that Rene Girard identified is that one side does something and the other side begins to imitate. And as they heat up, as they move towards the object of their affection, they become more and more like each other. They imitate each other's behaviors and tactics. And at each juncture, two things are true. A, they believe they're completely justified. And B, the people who aren't either one of the teams, who aren't part of the Civil War, watching from the outside, say, geez, they're an awful lot like each other. You Republicans, you're no better than Democrats. You have no moral claim right now. You're horrible. But I'm not going to try to talk you out of being horrible. I'm going to ask you to empathize with your future self, who is creating a pendulum effect, a set of precedents that will come to get you and the people you cared about, because you lost your values, you lost your principles, and you became just like the thing you hated.